All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. Hold on, I'm getting some kind of computer issue. Okay, welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George, and today the market was closed in the US, the market was closed in Canada, wherever else you may be. Drop in the comments if the market was open where you were. So the Bitcoin miners really didn't trade today because most, all of those are listed on the NASDAQ. There's some of them that are still listed on the Toronto exchange, but that wasn't open either. So, however, Bitcoin is 24/7, 365. So Bitcoin, the altcoins did continue to trade, but very, very, very sideways. So we're going to talk about what's going on with Bitcoin. There is still a bunch of news. We had a bunch of news this week on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin miners, on tariffs, on the economy, on the fear and greed index. It's pure panic out there, and we're going to see what everybody thinks about it. So that's what we're here to talk to. Do us a special favor today because the market was closed. A lot of people don't know about the stream, so if you could hit the thumbs up or the like button. It's going to be really hard today to get to 100 likes. We need your help, please, if you're watching live. And if you're watching later, you can still smash the like button. It does still help the channel, and it is much appreciated. What are you thinking, George? Wow. Wow, that is incredible. Thank you, Miner Deegan and George, for pointing that out. That's right. It's been, I think we're, like you said, a day short of a year ago. And the fact is, we've had a massive, massive run-up, but it doesn't feel like it. And some of the run-up came early because of the ETFs being released in January of 2024. We had a run-up before the halving. So this cycle, although I think in the end it will mirror the other cycles, it's definitely not identical. There's a lot of different things going on this cycle that have never happened in the previous cycles. So we're living a different experience here for the cryptocurrencies. The altcoins are wrecked right now. They're practically in a crypto winter, and I know that's especially difficult because in October, November, December, I know most influencers on YouTube were pretty much saying the time is now. It's altcoin season. Don't miss the beginning. Like, there was a gigantic push across the board in the last quarter, the fourth quarter of 2024, that it's altcoin season. Well, everything has gotten totally destroyed since then, down 60, 70, 80%. Bitcoin's pulled back. Bitcoin did a 30% pullback, which, for Bitcoin, that's some of the larger pullbacks that we get inside of a bull market. And I do believe we are absolutely still inside of a bull market. So it's all time frames, right? If you look big picture, I don't think this bull market is over. We're clearly 3 months into some bearish activity. We're going to go to the 1 week chart later and take a look at a pattern that's been playing out over the last year. We've been talking about it for months and months and months, and it kind of foretold this painful 2 or 3 or 4 month period. But that's always the hardest part. Is it 2 months? Is it 4 months? Is it 5 months? In 2024, it was 7 months. 2024, now we all forget. We look back and think, what a great year. The Bitcoin was up 122%, but there were 7 months we were in a bearish part of, a short-term bear cycle inside of the larger bullish cycle, which had Bitcoin up 122% on the year. So I think the same thing's going to happen this year. I think we've actually turned the corner. I'll tell you early on now, I'm just calling it. I think Bitcoin has already bottomed. I know people are looking for a lot lower numbers. I'll show you some articles of people that are predicting lower numbers. Some of them are predicting much lower numbers. I think we have bottomed. And I think, and I think that for a lot of reasons, some of them are technical reasons, some of them are just trying to read the tea leaves on what's going on geopolitically, and most of all, I think, you know, the fear and greed index, not the crypto fear and greed index, the overall fear and greed index that CNN does, on a scale from 1 to 100, 100 being extreme greed, 0 being extreme fear, we were a 3. That's the second worst reading. We were a 3 and a 4. So for four of the 5 worst readings in the history of that index happened over the last 10 days. So we've reached a level of panic that I think it's unprecedented. It's unwarranted. I mean, we've seen much bigger things happen. For those of you who've even been investing for 5 years, never mind 10 or 15 or 20 or 30, we've seen a lot bigger things than this happen. I'm not saying there's not turmoil, because we're going to talk. There is massive uncertainty. So, right, that's the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And, you know, one leads to the next. And I'm not denying that's going on right now, and it's affecting the market. But to my point, if there was ever a chance, you know, if the bears wanted to take control and drive Bitcoin down to one of these low numbers everyone's talking about, I mean, that was the window. Everything else got wrecked. Even the, you know, Mag 7 stocks got wrecked. They lost like $1 trillion in one day, the 7 of them. And Bitcoin just kind of hung out, and it's still just hanging out. We talked about hanging out between 80 and 85,000. The range is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. You know, now we're hanging out between 83,000 and 85,000. So I think this is go ahead, George. Can you hear George? Can you speak? Let me see if it's, hold on. Something's going on here. Give me a second. I might have to bring in tech support, or I might be able to do this myself. Not. How about now? Speak. Can you try speak now? Oh, that's the wrong thing. One more try, and then I'm getting tech support. Come on. This is madness. Everybody give me 30 seconds. I don't think you can hear George. I'm going to get tech support in here. In 30 seconds, we will have this rectified. I will be right back. Fixed.
Should I keep talking? Maybe if I talk now. Oh, hey, Steven. How you doing, Steven?
Tech support to the rescue. And good. Enjoy.
Oh, good. Whoa. Hello, everyone. I think you can hear me now. Hi. You like the symbol in the back?
All right, everybody.
100K.
Sorry about that. You should all be able to hear George now. My apologies. I admit I have a little trouble with the tech sometimes. There's no doubt about it. All right. Well, welcome to the stream, George.
Now I won't have anything good to say.
Let's go do everything over we already did. No, I'm only kidding.
I think they got the gist of what we were talking about.
Yeah, agreed.
Bitcoin now, but people are saying this, Tom. Tell me if you agree with this. When Bitcoin starts to go down, the Bitcoin miners will start to go up.
When Bitcoin goes down, they think the miners are going to go up. So we'll do a poll to see that. I don't think that, but what I do think is you're going to see if Bitcoin starts retesting lower numbers, and we've seen evidence of this, the Bitcoin miners have been steadying out. So they've been going through a bottoming out process as well. They are still, I will tell you, I think, the 5 or 6 Bitcoin miners that I have high level of conviction in, I think are all at a buy. Some of them, in my opinion, again, this is not financial advice. Obviously, a lot I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But I think some of these are a screaming buy, and I think we're going to see a volatile move to the upside at some point before the end of the year that is similar to what we've seen in previous cycles where, things triple, quadruple, or more in short windows of time, not in a day, but in, a week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever the case may be. I think that's all still ahead of us. And where they've driven these, and I'm going to look at some of the short positions, where these are sitting right now makes it makes no sense to me at all. We'll look at some of the numbers. Pretty much every single Bitcoin miner we follow is cash flow positive, and some of them are, pretty significantly cash flow positive. So I know there's a big narrative out there that these companies lose money, but the fact is, yes, if you include depreciation, if you include, stock compensation, by GAAP measures, oftentimes some of these companies are around break even or they lose a couple of bucks. But the reality is the depreciation on these machines is extremely accelerated, right? These companies do whatever they can to write stuff off. And in reality, what do companies live on? Cash. So they are pretty much big time cash flow positive right now. It's not being priced in at all. And by the way, that's at Bitcoin 84,000. What if we get to Bitcoin 150,000?
Would be happy.
I think there's a false narrative going on out there that I've heard, it's the main thing people say, well, they don't make any money. Well, I don't know what your definition of money is, but if your bank account keeps having more and more, if it keeps getting to a bigger number, to me, that's making money. And I understand, we look at things in several different ways. We've got EBITDA, we've got GAAP earnings, and, with the Bitcoin miners, sometimes it's even a little more complicated than that. But the bottom line is most of these companies are big time cash flow positive. Now, if they're choosing to hold all their Bitcoin and not sell them, understand that means they chose to invest their cash in Bitcoin instead of in cash, but it's still, quote, cash flow positive. I'm going to do that poll, George.
We're going to switch them to do it. Rough to get into the swing of things when I'm in vacation mode.
Aha. So I just did your poll. Will the Bitcoin miners move up if Bitcoin moves down? Are we going to get some kind of inverse relationship going on here? And Ty is saying, and the institutional shares keep going. Go ahead, George.
50,000. I'm just saying if it goes down to like 78,
something retest the 76,000 or whatever that we've recently been at. I think, right? I mean, you can't sit here and say it's not going to retest 76,000. There's a strong line of support at 69,000. So obviously, it's not impossible that it's going to reach those numbers. I don't think that it will. I think we've very clearly, the bears had the most golden opportunity handed on a silver platter to drive to new lows, and they could not do it. There was just a buying wall that they couldn't break. So to me, that's, and there was some ultra mega high volume days. So, and on those days, that means the buyers were there.
Well, that one Friday, really, with CleanSpark was it 74 million? Something crazy like that?
Right. There were days these companies did 3 or 4 or 5 times their average trading volume. A massive, And that's the type of capitulation you're looking for. So we've seen a lot of signals. Now, you know, sometimes like last year, all of this took much longer than we wanted it to. But when it moved, it ripped, it ran huge. Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. And the Bitcoin miners are way off of their highs. And I have that chart. Maybe we'll go to that next because this is why I'm looking at opportunity. The Bitcoin miners, I have a chart of where the Bitcoin miners are right now in relation to their 52-week high. For one of the Bitcoin miners, I went out a little further than 52 weeks because their high of this cycle was about 13 months ago, not 12. But essentially, this cycle's high versus where they are now. So should we go visit that one? Okay, so from the cycle high, now that's a different date for each one of these Bitcoin miners. For a lot of them, it was December of 2024 or January of 2025, which was just 3 or 4 months ago. For some of them, it was a year ago. So sometime over the last 12 to 13 months, all of these things hit a high. Bitcoin's down 22.4%. So you can see the Bitcoin miners are dramatically underperforming Bitcoin. You've got the leader out of this group, the best performing miner versus its high from this cycle is Marathon, down almost 63%. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got Bitfarms down close to 80%. And everybody else is in the middle. I mean, here's the, you know, the kind of the median here. 68 Riot 68%, Cleanspark 69%. I mean, particularly I'm looking at Riot, Cleanspark, and as Marathon's closest peers due to their HODL strategy. There's 4 companies that actually have a huge HODL. HUT is the other one, 10,000 or more coins. But Riot has almost 20,000. Marathon has almost, you know, coming up on 50,000. So those are gigantic stacks. 3 of the 4. Marathon is the second. Obviously, MicroStrategy, or now Strategy, is the largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company. But Marathon's second, Riot's third, and Cleanspark's fourth. So, you know, that's a lot of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes on a rampage, I would expect these stocks to go along with it. I mean, it and other than Marathon, which did borrow a lot of money to buy a bunch of their Bitcoin, most of this is just self-mined Bitcoin. With HUT, it's all self-mined Bitcoin. With Cleanspark, it's all self-mined Bitcoin. With Riot, it's probably 80% of it is self-mined Bitcoin. They did buy some Bitcoin a couple of times, a little bit. And actually, HUT went out and bought like 990 Bitcoin one time several months ago. But most of it's self-mined. Either way, it's sitting on their balance sheet. So when I look at some of these companies, you know, it depends. You got to ask yourself, you go, you know, whatever company, here's Cleanspark down 70%. Does that make sense? Right? Compared to their operations, their financial statements, their fundamentals. It may make sense compared to world events, compared to the fact that, you know, sentiment, the fear and greed index and all those other. So in that context, it makes sense. But those things will change over time. We know historically, without exception, the best time to buy stock is when we get into extreme fear. Now, the amount of time it takes for that to pay off depends. Sometimes we get a V-shaped recovery and it's instant. Sometimes not so. Sometimes it takes a little while. So, you know, there's no guarantee you're going to go double your money next month. There's nothing is a guarantee in the stock market. And these, looking at this chart, you can see this is one of the most volatile places you can be in the entire market. So, but I do think there's massive, some of these companies I think are performing from a financial statement standpoint, from an operational standpoint. I give some of these companies an A. I see some A's and B's in this group. And, you know, an A or a B does not deserve to be down 70% from its 12-month high. And we've experienced this. I'll give you an example with several companies that are 100 times the size of this. Meta tanked. Meta went down from $500 or $600 down to like $80 And where is it today? Let me go. Let me find. Come on. This is gold. Meta, which is Facebook. And this name change was a part of the fiasco. That's right when this stock tanked. They did a name change from Facebook to Meta, and Zuckerberg did that 1 hour video where people, I mean, honestly, that tanking was a trade-off of that video, in my opinion. Now, since then, they did massive rounds of layoffs. They have cut spending in areas that weren't making money. Their performance has been exceptional. But my point of this is, if you look at a 5-year chart, I mean, this company went from $376 down to, this says it at some point it got down to 80. I'm not even, on the 5-year, you can't even see it. So, that is catastrophic. And then what happened? From it almost 10x'd. It got up to almost 750. This is over a couple of years. The stock's up 1% over the last year, so it's done nothing over the last year, but you can see in the middle, there's these gigantic swings. So my point is, if Meta can 10x, which is a multi-trillion-dollar company, is it really that hard to believe that some of the Bitcoin miners are going to be successful in 3x or 5x or who knows, maybe 8 or 9 or 10x? And I point that one stock out, but Meta is not alone. There are several other. Look at Netflix. Netflix did the same thing. It was sky high. It absolutely crashed down 60, 70, 80%. And then now it broke its previous high by a mile. It did another one of those almost 10x type of things. This is how the stock market behaves now. We are in more volatile times. And I think because of the nature of how everybody's hooked in and connected, and anybody who wants to can go get a Robinhood or its equivalent account. They don't even need to know what they're doing, and they can trade stocks. So we're going to live in this volatility, this adjusted level of volatility, I think forever. This is the new normal. But there's opportunity inside of that new normal.
I'm personally glad that they are down the big 7, by the way.
Yeah, and they've, let's look at a few of those, because some of these stocks have tanked. Meta's down 17% in the last month, but if you go to let's go to NVIDIA year to date, they're down 24%. They're up 20% year over year. They were at $150 and now they're at 100. So, they got to go up 50% to get back to where they were in January. 3 months ago. So that's a huge, and this is now, whereas this is now $2.47 trillion company. For a minute, they passed even Apple. This did spend a few days as the largest company in the world at $3.5 trillion. So they've lost $1 trillion of market cap. Speaking of losing $1 trillion of market cap, you've got Apple. Its 52-week high is 260. It's now at $196. It's under $3 trillion. Apple was so far above this. Now, it never got to $4 trillion, but the fact that this has now popped under $3 trillion, and the fact that any of these companies are $3 trillion is mind-boggling to me, but this is a $3 trillion, and you can see it's not like it's a $3 trillion on a 500 PE ratio. This has got 31 trailing 12-month PE ratio. So, this is not crazy time. And the one that's even more steady than this, these two stocks have dominated the stock market for the last 20 years. So Microsoft is off of its 52-week highs from 468. It's down to 367. It's a $2.7 trillion
company. So this has lost $600 or $700 billion of market cap as well. So to your point, George, those top 7 companies have probably lost, $3 trillion in market cap in the last several months. And it's why we've seen a correction in the stock market. If we go take a look at where did it go? Well, I'll use this one. So if you take a look at the S&P 500, from the top to the bottom, so that was February 19th to April 7th, a month and a half, that was down 21%. That's the S&P 500. That's the broadest measure of the stock market. If you look at the Qs, and I go to this information line, they were down 25.5%. That's deep into bear market territory. And guess what? It only gets worse. If you look at the Russell, it was down 31% from top to bottom. And that was a couple of weeks ago. And this is why I'm saying, if you look at all of these charts, the bottom is in. Now, is there some, quote, black swan event or some other thing where we have maybe a flash crash and revisit these lows? Obviously, that is always possible. There's no guarantee of anything, but we had gigantic corrections. I mean, 10% is a correction, rule of thumb, old rule of thumb, and I think this will change over time with the increased level of volatility. 20% is a bear market, 30% is a crash. The Russell 2000 was down 31%. I mean, these small caps, that's after trailing the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 drastically over the last 5 years. So the small cap stocks, which our stocks are caught in, still haven't made their move. But if history is any indication, they will catch up.
Tom, during the Great Crash, how much, in 08 and 29, what percentage was the stock market down?
We can go back there, but I think it was like 50%.
So 31's nothing.
I mean, 31's a legit crash. I know a lot of people that are either on the cusp of retiring or have retired, and I'm talking to them, and they are in a full panic. They're absolutely panic. Oh, I got to go back to work. And it's like, are you going to run out of money in the next 3 years? No. So you think the stock market is just down forever and dead? And that's the sentiment. I think we said something about that in our thumbnail. That's what's going on out there. People think this is the end of days. It's the end of the stock market. Everything's broken. We're crashing. We're going down from here. We're going to get into Jerome Powell. He's not helping. In fact, he is intentionally trying to punish the stock market. He came out and said some stuff that there was just absolutely no reason to say whatsoever. And I disagree. It's an opinion. It's his opinion, which he's entitled to. However, he's the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So when you get in front of a microphone and tell the whole world your opinion, and your opinion affects policy, then, you have an obligation and a responsibility. And I just don't think it was responsible for him to say what he said. We'll go through and quote. I got an article so I can quote him directly. I don't want to misquote him, but essentially he's worried about, worst case scenarios, stagflation, and telling people do not expect rate cuts because they're not coming. Now, the market doesn't believe him. The market's still pricing in rate cuts. But if you ask Jerome Powell, I see somebody saying the bottom is in. Trump is a wrecking ball and doing a great job at it.
He is doing a great job of wrecking it.
And then Katie saying, we will see more pain. Wait till tariff prices really start kicking in. So I have a different spin on that. I think what you're going to see, I think we just went through the pain. We just pulled the rug out of 150 trade agreements. Set a new floor tariff. There's lots of countries. I was looking into Singapore, which is fascinating to me. Singapore has a trade deficit with the United States, and there's a little bit complicated reasons why that is, but I found that shocking since, there's been a big push to move manufacturing to Singapore. So, and US manufacturing or any other country's manufacturing, if it's done in Singapore and shipped out from Singapore, it counts as an export in their numbers. Even yet still with all of that, they have a trade deficit, and they went from 0 tariff to a 10% tariff because Trump put a 10% tariff across the board on everybody. So there's countries like that. I think what you're going to see, and it's going to start with Japan, and it's going to be sooner than later, you're going to start to see deals happen. So I think this was the worst of it. We just canceled every deal we have with every country in the world and declared basically a trade war on China. So that one's going to linger. I don't see that settling itself quickly. But, if we settle with Japan, with the UK, with the EU, 3 or 4 other major players, some of the small countries like Singapore, that's, that 10% tariff is, maybe it'll stay, maybe it won't. It's almost a punishment where the logic behind the 10% tariff is we have a trade deficit, the United States, with most countries. So we need to set up some incentive to balance that. Well, Singapore actually has a trade deficit with us. It's a unique situation. And I bring that up. I did a deep dive on that a little bit because BitDeer makes their machines in Singapore. That's a Singapore company. So I wanted to see what all this tariff ramifications were going to have on BitDeer. And it turns out it's going to be tiny, insignificant. And the reality is, most of the Bitcoin miners, even though a lot of them are Chinese companies, almost none of the Bitcoin miners are actually made in China. So they're not going to get this 145%. Somebody talked about 245% tariffs. I think that spiraling up is over. Now we're starting to talk about starting to talk. But from the Bitcoin mining companies, I wanted to understand what effect is this going to have on, Riot and Marathon and CleanSpark and Iris Energy and BitDeer, who not only, runs machines, but makes and sells machines. And I got an article on Auradine, which is a Marathon related company. They had some news this week as well. So my point is, I think the shock came all at once, and it was dramatic, and everybody was traumatized. But to me, going forward, what we're going to start to get is better news. Oh, we got a deal. Trade's back one step closer to normalizing. We got another deal. We're one step closer to normalizing. That, I think, is the strategy. I do not think that there's going to be these monumental tariffs, right? And basic negotiating 101. The first plan that was put out there is not, what the U.S. is looking for. That there's going to be, you got to leave room to compromise. I think we will compromise, particularly with the countries that have, for generations have been, we've had a very positive relationship that we're allies with, that we're friends with. So I think you'll see those settle down. But I do think that there will be some negotiating, and the United States will get some things back. Some things like, I don't want to talk politics, but I think one of the, some of the big things that Trump is looking for is for the rest of the world to pay their fair share. The United States is going broke defending the world and spending recklessly and all that other stuff. So, I understand it's a lot of factors, but, we're looking to reverse that trend. Something has to reverse because the U.S. is on an unsustainable course. And so this is a course, an attempted course correction. We'll see if it's in the right direction.
There's some really funny comments, and I agree with you, Katie. Who says that? They're calling me to kiss my ass. I thought that was the most stupidest thing Trump's ever said. You know, about negotiating the tariffs.
Well, that's a tough
Uh,
list right there you just mentioned.
I know. And Cece, sorry about your husband. What was his handle, by the way? And I'm sure he didn't love listening to Tom. He loved listening to George because George was right about XRP.
Oh, well, thank you, Cecil B. And I'm
That was
sorry
nice,
to hear
you know.
that. And good for you for not giving up. I do think that there's good things ahead. So, you know, this
I
has
think
been
we're at the bottom. I mean, you know, whether we're exactly at the bottom or bouncing from the bottom, we're there. You know, because if they go too much lower, everyone's going to leave this space, Tom.
yeah. Oh, and that's not how you make money. You don't make money
Right.
by going in one direction forever. So you'll notice the volatility. If I go to it, I'm going to go to, let's go to, you know, here's MicroStrategy. Here's an ultimate example. MicroStrategy in a short window of time from September of 24 to November of 24, MicroStrategy was up 371% in 2.5 months. I mean, that's volatility. But on this same chart, if you look, you know, here's a little 50% pullback, right? Back in 2024, 50% pullback. And if you panicked here because it pulled back 50% and sold, then what you missed from there, you know, was a 438% run up. Now we're living at the moment on the other side of that equation. You know, it ran down 56%. But what does it do after it does that? Now, you know, I think MicroStrategy has been acting very strong over the last couple of weeks. And I think you're going to see on a lot of these charts, from a technical standpoint, the Bitcoin miners at long last are starting to look like they've set a very strong floor. And some of them have already bounced off of that floor and started moving back up. Now, MicroStrategy, if I was to do this, you know, this is kind of a trading range. Now, they broke out of it a little bit here this one time, but so they hit the top of the trading range, they traded to the bottom, to the top, to the bottom, above the top, to the bottom, and now they're back to the top. So the question becomes, are they going to turn around and run back down? But to me, I'm optimistic because you can see you've got the RSI is not out of control. We just passed 50 and it's moving in the right direction. On the MAC, this is the one-day time frame. On the MACD, we just had a bullish crossover a few days ago. We're early into the bullish momentum and gaining momentum. So, you know, maybe this is the time for some of these to start running. I don't know. Or maybe it's a month from now. Or maybe it's 3 months from now. That's the hard part. Oh, Sour Melon Gaming's recommending a poll.
I'm doing it.
Oh, you're doing it? Good. Duckman, welcome.
I saw that. I know. That's why I laughed.
Stronghold. So, Duckman, have you converted? Stronghold is now Bitfarms. So, are you in Bitfarms? Listen, they sold. They got their number, and they survive. And Stronghold's a company, you know, Duckman has been visiting us over the years, for years and years now. He's been a Stronghold supporter, but George and I have talked a lot about Stronghold, particularly a couple of years ago. Not so much in the success of their stock, but what they're doing as a company. You want to talk about a green company? I don't, you know, is their website still there? It probably is. What they're doing is incredible work. So kudos to Stronghold. And Bitfarms bought Stronghold. And Bitfarms, by the way, the beaten down. If you look at this week, who won the week? So this was not a good week for the Bitcoin miners. This was a short trading week, only 4 days. Bitcoin up 1%. The only Bitcoin miner that beat Bitcoin was Bitfarms, up 5%. And I have been pounding the table, and I have been buying January 2026 options. Bitfarms, in my opinion, is so monumentally oversold, I can't even make sense out of it. I look at it, and it's like stunning to me. And I know a lot of people think it's going to go a lot lower. I think, you know, if we look at the Bitfarms chart, let's go to the video. Like, there was this last line of support at 68 cents. So I drew this line years ago, and didn't it pull all the way back down to this line? But now you can see that was on April 7th. It's April 18th now. We have had a move up, some nice consolidation. I don't think we're revisiting this. Could we? Obviously. I mean, you guys know, in one day, we could do that in one day. But from this bottom, if I measure this, we're you know, this is on, we're up 23.6% in, you know, a relatively short period of time here, 7 trading days, up 24%. So this is when I was, this is the day, this is my last buy-in. And I told everybody the day I did it, that was a members only, live stream day. And I told everybody, I bought the bottom right here. And, you know, do I know for a fact it's the bottom? No, you never know. But this seemed, and this day I bought a lot of the Bitcoin miners because a lot of the charts look like this. This was just, to me, it was an insulting buying opportunity, in my opinion. So that's how I feel about it. Even if we revisit it again, I'll buy more, because this is ludicrous, in my opinion. We're at 50 likes. We're making progress, even though today was not a day the market was open. So if you could do us a favor, we've never not gotten 100 likes. So if you're here and you're willing to and you're able to smash the like button, it is much appreciated. It helps the channel out a lot. Thank you for the 50 people that have done so already.
You digested what Bitfarms said on their last report, whatever it was.
It's almost more, have I come to terms with what is now the new Bitfarms.
Digested, yeah.
Yes.
Come to terms. Yeah.
And the answer is yes. Am I disappointed that they're not going to do what they were talking about a year ago? So I'll just give a quick summary on this. For most of 2024, for the first 9 months of 2024, Bitfarms was projecting that they would get to 21 exahash by the end of 2024 and 35 exahash by the end of 2025. So that was the plan. And they stuck to those talking points, you know, for 9 solid months. And then they told us, oops, that's not happening. Some of that, you know, I think they were absolutely forced into changing their game plan, mostly because their stock was just absolutely tanking. They had a hostile takeover bid from Riot that destroyed their stock. They had other advocacy groups. They were turning over members of the board, adding members, deleting members. They fired their CEO. So, you know, first they announced they were going to have a smooth transition. The old CEO was going to help find a new CEO. And then the next thing we knew, he was fired and he was suing the company for $24 million or something like that. I mean, it was just bad news after bad news. So while operationally this company continued to perform, in my opinion, at an A level, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. And the market is always going to punish you for that, period. And subsequently, they've had to come out twice and reduce their targeted exahash. So now, you know, they're not talking about 35 exahash at all. I think they're going to get into the low 20s, and then we'll see what happens to their stock. I do think, you know, 120 days from now, if this is, you know, $1.80 stock, I think you're going to see them singing a different tune. But I want to show you guys something because, you know, Forget all the background noise. I'm going to show you a slide from their investor presentation, and you tell me if this is a company that's failing. I got to find it.
I got all excited.
Okay, here. So January 1st, 2024, 6.5 exahash. December 31st, 2024, 12.8 exahash. Almost exactly a double in 2024. There were only 4 Bitcoin miners that were able to double their exahash in 2024. So Bitfarm held ground with the big dogs in their growth. Okay, so what happened since then? It's only 4 months later. Now they're at 18.6 exahash. Does this look like a company that's stock is down 80% in this time frame? It doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, in the middle, they improved their efficiency of their fleet by 45%. They have completely refreshed their mining fleet. So they nearly tripled their exahash. Their output, if we go take a look at this, and I always end up having this little Bitfarms segment because the narrative on it mystifies me. It doesn't mystify me why there was an origin to this narrative, because they did make a lot of missteps, mistakes, but you also have to look at performance. And I think they've adapted and adjusted, and they're doing what they have to do. So yes, I've reassessed. Their other plan would have been better. That would have been great, but that's at 80 cents or 68 cents, you're not raising money. I don't want them to go to 35 exahash by diluting at 70 cents a share. That's a nightmare. So they've done the exact opposite. In fact, the press release they just put out within the last week was they're going to borrow $300 million. And I talked about this several times. They need to stop their at-the-market offering. This company needs to borrow money. They need to borrow money at a reasonable rate and grow that way. And so they were able to do that much more quickly than I thought. Like just 2 days after I said that, a press release came out that they were able to borrow $300 million. So that was the perfect solution in my mind for this company. So yes, but having said that, I understand if people want to bail, because this is not the Bitfarms of 10 months ago. This is not the company that's going to be at 35 exahash at the end of 2025. That's not happening. They're not even saying it's going to happen anymore. Having said that, if you look at this page, I mean, these are the facts, right? They were at 35 watts per terahash on January 1st, and now they're at 19. They're in the top half. They're in the top half in every category. The number of Bitcoin mined, the number of exahash under management, the efficiency of their Bitcoin mining. I mean, they have a strong balance sheet. So
Just pissed somebody off, Tom.
I did.
No, they did. Bitfarms did. I don't know why or how or what, but it's, look at HUT. I think HUT is an amazing company because to me, it seems like it was brought back from the dead like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, there's no doubt. I spent a year, the better part of a year, not really clear on exactly what their business model was. So to me, that's similar to Bitfarms. Bitfarms said they were going to do something and they didn't do it. With HUT, people didn't necessarily notice, but they went 3.5 years without buying a Bitcoin mining machine.
I noticed. And not only that, they just spun it. You know what I mean?
Right. It gets hard. We were questioning, and they answered that question. This monthly operational update was a game changer for HUT 8. Prior to this monthly operational update, I've been asking the question, is this even really a Bitcoin mining company? Because for months and months in a row, their exahash under management has gone down. The number of Bitcoin they mine per month has gone down. They haven't bought a new machine in 3.5 years. what's going on over there? They seemed like they were more of an energy focused company, and that's okay. You know, high performance computing, AI, et cetera, but they just got back into the Bitcoin mining in a giant way. They doubled after not adding any machines for years. They doubled their exahash in 1 month. They went from 4.5 to I think 9.3 exahash from February to March. They doubled the number of Bitcoin they mined, and I think you can expect that number to go up significantly again next month. So, you know, they're back in the game with the stated intention of getting to 50 exahash.
And Sour Melon Gaming came up with a good point, and that the reputation's wrecked. You know, and if you were to say anybody that knows our industry, right? And you would say, who is the worst Bitcoin miner? And just, I mean, who cares about fundamentals? It's all psychological, right? Who, and I think most people would say Bitfarms.
That might be true, but let me ask you this. If anybody were to say in the whole entire Bitcoin mining industry, who's the best person out there at running a fleet? And I think a lot of people would say Ben.
Yeah, but that's not his job.
Well, I understand. They put him in the CEO position, and you know,
right,
that his job description morphs, although I suspect he's still, you know, heavily involved in that, but now he has many additional responsibilities.
Even think about Ben for a second. You know, Ben moved to Puerto Rico. It's sad that we know all this stuff. That's what's really sad. You know, he moved to Puerto Rico to get out of taxes from Canada. Allegedly, I can't confirm that.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
I can't confirm or deny that. And you just think about that stuff, what people do, and you know, and everybody talks to one another in this industry, and everybody knows everybody in this industry. And I'm telling you, they still, you know, because I mean, they all meet with the same investors. They, you know, there's only how many channels on YouTube talking about Bitcoin miners, right? And look at the hate that we always get when we talk about it. I mean, and rightfully so.
There's two things well, there's three things, one of which I think is going to happen.
I know what you're talking about.
Number one, they need to do what we've been talking about on this channel for years. In the time that we've been talking about this, half the other Bitcoin miners have done this. They need to move their domicile to the United States. They just bought Stronghold. They have the perfect situation. I feel like that announcement is imminent. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's number one. Number two, they need to get their stock price above $5. Because many institutions just will not, it's written into their bylaws. They won't buy a stock under $5. Now that is irrational because a stock price is basically meaningless. It's market cap really that matters, but it's just the facts. Many institutions will not buy a stock under $5. So they need to do a couple of things. In addition to that, they need to perform at a high level. They need to do what they said they were going to do, and Bitcoin needs to run. So that's a lot of if, I understand. But I think most of those things are going to happen. And they don't have to wait to move to the U.S. and get to $5 before they start to run. I think they will run with the rest of the Bitcoin miners because they're a highly efficient miner. And while retail investors can be more emotional and care more about the fact that, you know, they didn't do what they said they were going to do and hold a grudge for a long period of time, all hedge funds want to do is make money. And if they can make money by getting Bitcoin down to, or Bitfarms from almost $4 down to 68 cents and then running it back up to $4, then that's what they're going to do.
You know what would be the perfect timing right now? And I wonder if someone's going to do this, to write a short report about the miners, the Bitcoin miners, specifically, I don't know, Marathon or Cleanspark.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of those come out, and we've seen, listen, MicroStrategy hit on the day, intraday, on the day it hit its all-time high, there was a short report released, and it crashed. And it's still nowhere near. It's still, I'm going to go to their chart. It'll be obvious what day it is just by looking at their chart.
And those guys make so much money. It's not even funny.
So guess which day they wrote a short report? This one right here. This thing was taking off. And then boom, a short report comes out and this thing turns around and plummets. Right? So this hit its all-time high up around 500. Let's see. It was, if I read the notes, $543. This was in November. It just had to have a huge rally to get to $317 right now. And by the way, like I said, this one's performing well because if you look at this, here's the same scenario. This is that same day I bought my last round of dollar cost averaging in was on this day because like I said, it was a ridiculous. This got down to 230 something dollars. Since then, it's up 35% almost in 6 or 7 trading days. That's a massive move to the upside because in my opinion, these have bottomed. So can't say that for a fact, but to me, that's how all of these feel. This was a capitulation day, and so was this. Right. And to your point, George, the beginning of this conversation was a short report. These short reports in the short term, they even themselves out over time and they disappear and go away unless they're valid. You know, Hut had a short report written against them and then they got crushed. And if you remember, I had an interview set up with them. And then at the last minute, they said, we're not going to talk about the short report. So, you know, that one was set up. We were going to, they canceled it that day, or I canceled it. I won't blame them. And I understand they didn't want to acknowledge it. So, which I think is, you know, one of the reasonable responses to a short report, especially that short report was vicious. The short report on Hut 8. So
I was going to say, yeah, the one Hut, and it was accurate, by the way.
Well,
and they're still today have never resolved any of those issues. If you read it, by the way,
they brought up a lot of stuff. Some of it to me seemed to almost get a little too personal. I mean, it was almost like personal insults. And it's like, that's just not necessary or helpful to me as an investor. But yeah, did they raise some valid points? I mean, the stock took a beat down, but this is why I say they're short-lived, because look at what Hut then did after that. Right? Hut went from, in September of 2024 to December of 2024, Hut was up 264% from $11 to almost $32. So,
but I think that Bitfarms sees Hut and they can't understand why.
well,
and with this last report, with what they said, I think they're trying to mimic now Hut, and they're not following their strategy anymore. Does that make sense? And they went out and got some company member.
They hired 2 consulting groups to go out basically and be a sales force to try and recruit high performance computing customers, because they are going to allocate a bunch of their resources and a bunch of their megawatts of electricity to high performance computing. So they're diversifying. 75% of the Bitcoin miners are diversifying, and it's probably more of that. Really, CleanSpark is the one company that has been crystal clear. We are not involved in high performance computing. We will never be involved in high performance. Never say never, but you know, they said we are a pure play. We are a Bitcoin miner only. And they did have a press release this week, so I want to talk about what they're doing. And they've made a little change in their HODL strategy, and spoiler alert, I like it. So we should talk about their press release. But I'm more, MicroStrategy is a harder read for me than the Bitcoin miners, because I'm not, you know, I'm not sure. They've borrowed a lot of money. They've diluted a lot, and their stock has gone up significantly more than all, even with this big pullback, it's gone up significantly more than all of the Bitcoin miners. So they've been the best bet so far, but I'm not sure they're the best bet from here. So I do still hold my position in that. So, you know, do what you will, not financial advice, but I have less conviction by far in that than I do in Marathon. Somebody much earlier said Marathon's kind of a mini strategy or MicroStrategy in that they're, you know, raising money to buy Bitcoin. In addition to that, they're mining more Bitcoin than anybody. So we'll just take a quick look at that chart. This was everybody's Bitcoin mining results several years ago. Never mind. This was everybody's Bitcoin mining results in March of 2025. So this was a fascinating moment in time. Marathon, 829 Bitcoin. So they continue. I mean, they've been number one in this category for over a year. I don't see a scenario where somebody passes them unless there's some kind of weird month where they have a huge technical problem. They mine more Bitcoin than everybody else. But CleanSpark has been solidly in number two for pretty much that same period of time, with over 700 Bitcoin mined in March. What's interesting to me, the most fascinating semi-coincidence, Riot and Iron tied in March. They both mined 533 Bitcoin. So these two have been neck and neck for some time. They have roughly the same amount of exahash. And finally now, Iron and Riot tied this month. However, I'm going to go to a press release.
All right, welcome to Talkin Investing.
Let me find it.
Oh, Jack, no, say it isn't so. Hi, Bill.
Give me just one minute. What did I do with this?
You read it. Old Jack said, and thanks for being a member for 26 months. Do you think Iron or Iris is going to mine more BTC than CleanSpark this month? Question mark.
Thank you, old Jack. You're setting up exactly what I was looking for, and you gave me the time to find it. So this came out a couple days ago. Iron's capacity increases to 40 exahash. So their expansion to 50 exahash is on track for H1 of 2025. We're a month and a half away from the first half of 2025 being over. So they are growing quickly. So you can see Iron has increased its self-mining capacity from 37 exahash to 40 exahash, and they are at 15 joules per terahash. They are the number one in efficiency out of all Bitcoin miners as far as joules per terahash. CleanSpark is number two at around 17 joules per terahash. There's a gigantic grouping between 19 and 21 and a half. And those are close enough that I consider all those companies in good shape and trending in the right direction. The only one that really isn't making any progress, and I think never will, is Core Scientific. They're another one. They're not buying machines. They had a giant fleet. It gets smaller every month, and they're at, I think, 24 or 24.8 joules per terahash, which is a big jump from the next closest. Hut was at 29 joules per terahash in February. They got that all the way down to 21 in March by doubling their fleet. So, you know, that 19 to 21 is a sweet spot. There are two companies that are beating that. So my answer, old Jack, is yes. I think that, in fact, not just next month, I think you're going to see Iron move into third place ahead of Riot for the rest of the year. They're now past, so let's just take a quick look at exahash. So you can see they already at 37, they were past Riot in exahash. Riot's at 33.7. Riot does have big growth plans over the long term. They do not have big growth plans over the next 120 days. So Iron's already at 40 exahash. They're planning to get to 50 exahash. CleanSpark is also planning to get to 50 exahash by June 30th. So I think whereas the contest lately has been between Riot and Iron, who's going to mine more, I think Riot will now be solidly in fourth, and I don't see anybody passing them the rest of the year. But I think CleanSpark and Iron are now going to be at some point in a race. Who's mining more Bitcoin, CleanSpark or Iron? They should be close in numbers, maybe for the rest of the year. We'll see what happens. Iron did say when they get to 50, and I think actually they revised that to 52, they're done for the rest of the year. So they're going to hang out there. So CleanSpark has said they're going to get to 50, and they haven't clarified what's next. There is reason for me to believe, based on some things they said in the conference calls and that kind of stuff, that they could fairly easily get to 63 exahash this year if they chose to do so. And I think all of these Bitcoin miners are leaving that door open and flexible based on what Bitcoin does, because they don't. CleanSpark in specific, and a couple of companies in specific, have turned off the dilution valve. They don't even have an at-the-market program. They just borrowed $200 million, so I'll go to that. CleanSpark expands capital strategy with $200 million Bitcoin-backed credit facility from Coinbase Prime. So here's another company. They ended their at-the-market offering, and they're borrowing money to grow, and they also have shifted to self-funding operations. So for a year and a half, CleanSpark kept between 95 and 100% of the Bitcoin that they mined each month. So they were having to raise money to pay for operations. So from this point going forward, they're going to use their Bitcoin to pay for operations that they mine that month. And whatever's left, they're going to add to their HODL position. And I suspect at least 50% of what they mine should be left over. So this half and half strategy is what George and I have been talking about for years. Fund your operations and then save what you can after that.
You mean you're talking about my bread theory?
Yes, exactly.
Why do we treat this any differently than a baker baking bread? It's no different.
Right. They don't bake it and shelve it for 10 years, hoping it's worth more later. Now,
No, but you might have some ancient wheat in there that you can use for later, right?
So this is getting very interesting, but while I do think CleanSpark and Iron are going to vie for second place as far as the number of Bitcoin mined per month, there is a monumental, gigantic, fundamental difference in these two companies. CleanSpark is a 100% pure play Bitcoin miner. They're going to continue. They have, I think, now over 12,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and they will continue to add to that with whatever's left over after they pay for operations.
And a plane.
And a plane, yes. Don't forget that. Iron has the 100% opposite philosophy. They have no plane. That's the main thing. And number two, they sell 100% of their Bitcoin and always have. And now they've come out and clarified it is their intention to sell their Bitcoin every month and invest the proceeds into their high-performance computing infrastructure. So they want to grow that portion of their business. Now, to be fair, this is a company that went from 5, if they're to be believed, and they get to 50 exahash in the next couple of months, in 2 years, they will have gone from 5 exahash to 50 exahash. I mean, that's a grand slam home run. They did exactly what they said they were going to do. The only time it was different is when they beat it and did better. So from an operational standpoint, this is another A company. But you have to, as an investor, decide, do you like the fact that, they've grown their infrastructure on the Bitcoin mining side, but they hold no Bitcoin, and they take the proceeds and they're growing their AI business? Is that what you want to see from your Bitcoin miner? If the answer is yes, then Iron is the Bitcoiner for you. They're better at that than anybody. The question is that the strategy that you would want? And I want to go to some articles because there's money coming the Bitcoin miners' way. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
Tom, do you think that the strategic reserve will ever be officially adopted for the United States?
Yes.
You think that's sooner than later or later than sooner?
I don't think it's in 2025.
Okay.
But I think that we will add to our Bitcoin in 2025. We just won't get an official strategic reserve. That's my opinion. But I do think
I'll
we'll
do a poll,
add to our position.
and you guys will laugh at the poll.
Poll from
I won't
George.
tell you until it's
76 likes. Thank you, everybody who's hit the like button. If you're here and you're willing and able, if you could please hit the like button. It does help the channel. We're going for 100 likes. We've never not gotten 100. I will tell you, last week we got it right under the wire with like 2 minutes left in the stream. So I do appreciate everybody smashing the like button. It does help the channel out a lot. So enough of that.
There's the poll time.
I'm waiting to see George's. Is there gold in Fort Knox that is owned by the USA? So that's the big mystery. The question is real because there's no audit there's been no audit of the gold in there. So we don't know how much gold is in there. George is asking, is there any gold in there? Is this one of those what was his name?
This is gonna be an interesting. Wow, that poll's going all over the place, man.
That would be a disaster.
We're gonna get shut down now. The stream's not getting. No,
we're turned off. I say yes. We have all the gold that we claim to have in Fort Knox.
Do you believe?
Why would they make so many movies about robbing Fort Knox if it wasn't full of gold? That's not my real line of reasoning. I'm kidding.
There we go. We're down the middle right now. That's what I kind of expected.
I do think it's shocking that that's not something that's audited on a regular basis and we don't know down to the ounce how much gold we have. I don't understand what they're doing there. If they were a business, like that would be, the auditors wouldn't be, they wouldn't issue a report for a company that did that. They would have to say
I don't think we'll ever know, by the way, even if it's not there.
Well, especially right. If it's not there, we're never going to know. If it is all there, then we'll probably hear that news.
Is anyone buying options for CleanSpark?
I bought on that same Tuesday, I bought the dip and I bought shares of CleanSpark. The only thing I've been buying options for is Bitfarms, and they're the January 2026 options. And they are at 50 cents and $1. Both of those strike points. To me, they're just giving them away. I could be wrong.
Yes, is pulling away. Look at that.
I'm stunned that this is close.
Are you really?
Yeah, these polls always surprise me. That's why it's great we do different polls.
Do you think the moon landing was real too, Tom?
Yes, I do. Oh, I don't even want to do a poll. We should do a poll on that for fun.
This is Good Friday. We got to have some fun, right?
That is a resounding yes for me. I do believe that the moon landing was real. Yes. I know. I watched the special on Fox all those years ago where they allegedly proved that it didn't ever happen. But I happen to know a guy. This was not landing on the moon. I happen to know a guy. You know, the movie Apollo 13?
Yeah.
So I know a guy who was in the room that day. So I know that happened because he was there.
So you don't think they fooled them too?
Well, I guess how many people can be in on your conspiracy before it collapses? I mean, you tell 3 people a secret, I think you're done.
Right now, I think it's a couple thousand.
So while we're doing that poll, and then we should do that other poll for fun. This is good news right here. And the article talks about it. NVIDIA moves AI supercomputer production to the U.S., opening new avenues for crypto miners. I mean, it's right in the headline of the article. And this is not a little bit of money. NVIDIA will build Blackwell chips in Arizona and AI supercomputers in Texas to meet the surging AI demand. The company says it will manufacture up to $500 billion worth of AI infrastructure in the U.S. in 4 years. So where are these machines going to get stored? We know a lot of the Bitcoin mining companies have allocated, some of them have allocated half, some of them have allocated 2/3 of their megawatts of energy, reserving it for these high performance computing clients that they believe are on the way. Now, this pipeline takes time. The first one to do this was Core Scientific, and they have a multi-billion-dollar contract with CoreWeave, and they're banking on that, which is why they pretty much are letting their Bitcoin mining just kind of fade away. And, they're now the 6th or 7th largest Bitcoin miner, where for 2 years they were double the largest Bitcoin miner out of any Bitcoin miner, and they're fading that part of their business away. But they've got multi-billion-dollar contracts. Where's the rest of the companies? No one else has had a significant announcement. The one exception to that, I would say, is in proportion to its size, Bit Digital, which is a tiny company, in proportion to its $200-something million market cap, it has had some big announcements on big customers, which is why they've stopped doing monthly reporting. Their Bitcoin mining was down to a point where they were mining like 20. Let's go take a look before I make up a number. Bit Digital, if
Quickly,
I go backwards.
I'm going to switch this out here any minute.
They mined, the last time they reported, and they said they're not going to report anymore, they mined 28.7 Bitcoin in the month of January. So they were pretty much done with Bitcoin mining. The two companies were not tracking because they're not reporting anymore. You'll see in blue here, TeraWulf and Bit Digital are no longer giving us monthly operational updates, which tells me they're shifting their focus massively to the high performance computing / AI. We already know TeraWulf told us 2/3 of their infrastructure has been set aside and allocated for the high performance computing end of their business. So the question is, with NVIDIA, there's $500 billion. The market caps of all of these companies put together is only like $20 billion, the Bitcoin miners. So, there's your opportunity to 5x a very small industry that wants to be a piece of what we think is going to be one of the biggest industries out there. So I don't know. That all remains to be seen. We'll see if they succeed at that or not.
What is that, 1969? Is that when the moon landing was supposed to happen?
69, yes. Oh, yes ended up winning. Is there gold in Fort Knox owned by the U.S.? That ended up 60% yes, 40% no. A significant number of people doubt the gold reserve of the United States. And now let's see who believes in the moon landing. I mean, obviously,
That'd be interesting to know.
None of us can prove with certainty one way or the other, but that's true of almost everything.
Like
we're getting a mix.
I think
Let's see what goes on here.
I would think more people are going to believe in the moon landing than the gold.
Are you a no on this one, George?
Yes, I am a no on this one.
You are. You do not think we landed on the moon.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no. No. I didn't say that. I think somebody's been on the moon now, but I don't think we landed in it was specifically 1989. I mean, 1969, the year I was born. I don't believe we landed on the moon, because what happened right before that? Somebody was killed.
You were born.
No, somebody was killed.
Well, that was when several assassinations unfortunately happened,
when was Kennedy killed?
It was many years earlier, but it was his objective to land on the moon. So he started the moon launch program.
Wow, this
did
one's
not
closer.
live to see it to its fruition.
But what was it? 67, 68? He got shot.
I think it was, believe it or not, I think it was much
65,
earlier than that.
64?
Let me look it up, but it was, yeah, it goes back because then
Oh, was it?
Bobby Kennedy got shot years later than that, right? Martin Luther King got shot. Those were rough times.
It was pandemonium.
It was. I mean, we sit here and, you know, how quickly we forget, but those were very, very, very difficult
Wow,
times.
look at this one. 58-42 to no. Yes is winning at 58. I can't believe that.
November 22nd, 1963.
Oh, wow.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? Who do you think had him killed?
Any of the possible answers for that is going to end our stream forever. So I think it was an accident.
1963. So that was 6 years before I was born.
It's truly amazing they managed to avoid that and that they're able to protect the president and all the politicians and et cetera, et cetera. It's a remarkable job.
Especially nowadays.
And all the world leaders. I mean, it's incredible. Oh, we got a real tight race on this moon landing.
No, that's crazy.
What did I forget? So MicroStrategy bought 3,459 Bitcoin. That was a small purchase for them, but they continued to purchase Bitcoin. Oh, I wanted to show you guys this because this is what I'm saying. CleanSpark at $7.51, and I got to buy some with a 6 handle on it. And to me, I mean, the only obviously, you know, hindsight's 2020. I wish I had waited for some of my dollar cost averages, but that's not how it works. So you get what you get. But I did go a lot heavier on that day than I have in a long time. I took a few months off, but they got down to numbers on that day. And CleanSpark, if you look at CleanSpark, sorry, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Look at their most recently reported short position. This company's almost 33% shorted.
Which company is this?
CleanSpark.
Oh, wow.
That's insanity. So that tells me, I know, again, a company with strong fundamentals, doing, in my opinion, doing all the right things. This is a company, they want to make money on the way down and they want to make money on the way up. Some companies that are 33% shorted are shorted for a reason, because we know, you know, there's many companies that we, long before it happens, you pretty much know for a fact they're going out of business. So you short their stock and you hope that in the middle there's not some weird spike that, you know, you get liquidated. Because, you know, there are a lot of companies that reach a point where it is inevitable they're going out of business. That happens on a regular basis. This is not one of those companies. I don't think there's anybody out there that thinks CleanSpark's going out of business. This is a thriving company, yet they're among the most shorted companies in the entire stock market. By the way, Riot's at 27% shorted. And Marathon's at 27.8% shorted. So I bought all three of those plus Bitfarms last Tuesday because these prices are nonsense. I bought Marathon in the 10s last week. Right, I bought CleanSpark in the 6s. I bought Riot in the 6s. And I bought, you know, options on Bitfarms when they were at like 68 cents a share. It's hard to even be worth buying the options when the stock's only 68 cents a share. But I think the multiple on the options is going to make me more money than the shares. And I already own a ton of Bitfarms shares, so
Warrants, not options.
Yeah, I own no warrants. I will do options, like I mentioned. I'm not opposed to warrants. And there are times that the warrants outperform.
Thinking about selling my Cleanspark so the market can rally so everybody here does good.
You're going to think about taking one for the
honestly,
team?
we did it last time.
Oh, we haven't hit one big topic that I want to get to.
XRP, baby.
XRP. George has been saying something for the last 2.5 years that I will tell you, even I've been telling him, that's a conspiracy theory. That's a internet rumor. But here we go. This is Binance saying this. And it's everybody's saying it. XRP and SWIFT in the payment is the payment revolution here. Breaking news for XRP. The rumors are becoming increasingly persistent. SWIFT, the giant of international payments, it's not just the giant, it's basically all international payments, could be on the verge of embracing Ripple and its native cryptocurrency, XRP. Yes, you read that right. The system that moves trillions of dollars every day, trillions every day, is looking at XRP as the key to the future of cross-border transfers. But what is really happening? Get ready, because this could change everything. So I won't read you the whole article, but I will read you one person's take on this. So I'm not saying I agree with this, but here you go right away. We've got, here's what may drive XRP to $1,200, but it's at $2 right now, according to a market commentator. So let me be clear. I'm not calling for XRP $1,200. That's a 600x from here. But we've seen other things do it.
BTC, beta Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, beta testing coin.
So, and this person's line of reasoning is simply that they're going to get adoption from the SWIFT network, and, you know, they're going to be transacting trillions of dollars a day. And I want to just read one sentence from here. Let me find it.
Talk to somebody about buying Bitcoin right in the beginning. I'm just not going to tell anybody's name. I'm pointing in the screen, though. Not going to mention anybody's name. I'm like, dude, we should buy this. This seems like a great idea.
You wanted what you wanted to do, and obviously it would have worked out very well. You showed me a Bitcoin mining machine, and you said we should do this and mine Bitcoin.
And my friend sits on 550 Bitcoin.
And I did the math, and I said, if we mine Bitcoin, my electric bill is going to go up about $500 a month, and we're going to get like $50 a Bitcoin for that. Now, at that time, you know, Bitcoin was at $2, so $50 a Bitcoin back then, I mean, we'd be billionaires. But there's 10,000 people that could tell that story. But it is a true story. George was hounding me, and I just did the math, and it was like, it doesn't work. Now, obviously, I couldn't possibly have been more wrong. But I am not the only one, in my defense.
People that mined it back then, they had a way to get free electric. I don't know how they got the free electric, but they got the free electric.
I know a teacher that was mining Bitcoin at school on the school's machines. Rate, maybe it wasn't when it was at $1 or $2, but it was when it was at $5 or $10. And it took the school like 6 months to figure out what was going on. So that person made a lot of money if they held on to those Bitcoin. And I'm sure there's a million of those stories out there. But I did want to give George credit because George has been saying the SWIFT is going to adopt XRP and it's going to change everything. He's been saying that for years now. And now all of a sudden, this is not some, deep end of the dark web conspiracy. This is on Binance and everywhere else. If you type this in, you'll see everybody is speculating that this is going to happen. Yet, I'm going to show you another article. At the same time, in the very short term, XRP downside fears persist despite the ETF optimism options data shows. So they're talking about maybe lows of around $1.60. So is it really worth waiting to go from $2 to $1.60 if you think that the SWIFT network is going to adopt it, even if you don't think it's going to go to $1,200? Is it going to go to $5, $10, $50, right? Any of those things really don't make it worth waiting for a pullback from $2 to $1.60. Now, if you don't think that's going to happen,
$2.11.
$2.11 to down to $1.60.
So,
dollar cost your way in, not financial advice. You don't have to buy XRP at all if you don't think this is going to happen. Obviously, again, all of the stuff we talk about is ultra high volatility and ultra high risk.
I forgot to tell you this one, and the validity of this is true. They were talking about tokenizing the stocks on the stock market. And that's one of the reasons why they're beating up on the altcoins so much. Because if you tokenize the coins on the stock market, all the shenanigans are gone.
Yeah.
And they're scared to death of it. And when I mean they, I mean the people that have the big wallets, the whales.
Oh, that reminds me. For fun, since this is our day off day, I want to look at one other article that I think is totally the most ridiculous thing. It's tied with many other things for the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. Give me a second. I have like 80 tabs up, so that's why sometimes it takes me a minute to find the one I'm looking for. Okay. Quantum Computing Group offers 1 Bitcoin to whoever breaks Bitcoin's cryptographic key. Quantum computers can rapidly break the cryptographic algorithms that secure blockchain networks. That's what the subtitle is. Project 11 has launched the Q-Day Prize, offering 1 Bitcoin. I mean, big deal. You're talking about doing something that's like one of those revolutionary, game-changing things in history, and they're offering a grand prize of 1 Bitcoin to be the first team to break an elliptic curve cryptographic key using a quantum computer. So there's not a quantum computer on Earth that's even close to being able to do this. Most people, the people that are optimistic, think we're 10 years away from this. I think we're eternity away from this. That's my opinion. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but regardless, I do think safeguards. They're talking about potential hard forks for Bitcoin at some point in the future to try and safeguard against quantum computers. So, right now, all of that stuff is pretty distant, but, they are talking about it. And here's somebody offering a 1 Bitcoin reward. I mean, George, put their money where their mouth is.
I mean, I can't even imagine. That's so cheap. I think it would cost more than electric.
The person who makes that is going to make $100 million on what they did. They don't need this. These people's 1
what's
Bitcoin.
Interesting is that there's another aspect of the cryptic key or cryptic key, and it's supposed to rotate into multiple, like one of the programs I've seen is, it has 5 sets of letter and numbers and it rotates every so many minutes. How do you break that?
And see, this is why I don't think it's ever going to happen. But there is an article that said some of the old wallets, and they're talking about breaking into wallets. Some of the old wallets have a different fundamental way that they work. And, you know, a lot of like Satoshi's wallet, you know, is different than a new wallet. And they're talking about doing that hard fork and getting everybody onto these new wallets. I don't think, you know, if that happens, it's 5 or 10 years down the road. And I don't think we'll ever get a Bitcoin hard fork ever for any reason. So that's my personal opinion.
Just with the, you know, having your phone and getting the off, you know, the what is it from Google, the token that they give you so you can go in, and then they have you where you're located, what phone you used. They know exactly where you're located when you do that.
Well,
and then, you know, with my one wallet now, it sends me to another authorization code saying, are you doing this transaction? But I have to give you an update. There was a gentleman that helped us on on Discord, and I was going to give him some money for his help. I still have not been able to do that. And that's through my Coinbase wallet with BTC.
because they won't let you.
Yes, you heard it. Yeah. Is that not insane?
That is insane. Doug is saying Stockmo was mining Dogecoin, tons of it, and he got robbed of all of it. So I didn't know that. So there you go. There's an example. Well, and it goes to
multiple bad lucks, huh?
nobody's hacked Bitcoin. And we're a long way from a working quantum computer, in my personal opinion. What we're not a long way from is 100 likes. We're at 96. If somebody could get us over the finish line.
I didn't even think we'd get close to it. I was like 50, maybe 55.
Help us get there. Last week, everybody was awesome. They got us to the finish line under the wire. We're at 96. But let's take a look. Let's just take a look.
It could be user error too.
With some of this stuff getting lost or stolen.
Yeah. Someone sent me, hey, whoever that was, thank you. Someone just sent me a money on my Coinbase wallet.
Is that real?
Guess how much it was?
A penny.
No, 0.003.
0.0, less than a penny?
Yeah, less than a half a penny.
Hey, thank you, everybody. We just got over 100 likes. Thank you so much. Once again, under the wire. It is much appreciated. I just want to take a look at what the Bitcoin miners did this week before we say goodnight to everybody. We took a look at this briefly, but we really didn't get into it. Bitfarms had a very nice week, up 5%. Bitcoin was up 1%. Marathon was up 1%. Hive was up 1%. Cleanspark was flat on the week. Iron and TerraWolf did okay, down 1%. Cypher down 2%. But if I go to the bottom of the list, Hut was down 8%. Riot was down 8%. I don't know any reason why Riot was down 8% this week. I'm looking at maybe even buying some more Riot. Core Scientific down 6%. So more in the red than in the green. Bitcoin was pretty flat on the week. And if we go year to date, this is what's going on year to date. Bitcoin's down 9%. Cleanspark's in first place, down 18%. I mean, it's nothing to brag about being in first place when you're down 18%. Marathon's in second place. Riot's in third place. What do these three things have in common? I did say at the beginning of this year, I feel strongly the Bitcoin miners with hodl positions are going to outperform. Whereas they got outperformed in 2024, they got smoked by a lot of the companies that were putting out press releases talking about high performance computing. I think these three companies in particular, and Hut, now that they've gotten themselves back into the game, it may take a little while for them to catch up, but I don't think it's a coincidence that this is number 1, 2, and 3 right now. And at the other end of the list, I am taking a very close look. I never thought I would add another Bitcoin miner. I am looking into BitDeer in a big big way. I haven't bought any yet, but and I think it's a higher risk, higher reward. But if they're able to do 75% of what they're talking about doing, I think that it's going to be a grand slam home run. I don't know that they're going to be able to do it, right? They have lofty expectations, but that company's getting very interesting to me. And I have the opposite feeling about TeraWulf. TeraWulf down 58% on the year. That is an extremely shorted stock as well, almost 30% shorted. So, it has that in its favor, but they're not putting out monthly reports anymore. They haven't gotten a contract. What would be a game changer for TeraWulf if they turned around and got, a $500 million high performance computing contract? Then I think you would see their stock run. But they're not going to run on their Bitcoin performance because they're not even reporting their Bitcoin performance anymore. So it's all about high performance computing with TeraWulf at this point. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin miners. The Federal Reserve did not help us this week. Jerome Powell basically came out and said, now we're worried about inflation and a recession. So we can't lower rates. Don't expect us to lower rates. Don't expect us to bail out the stock market. He was asked that specifically, and he said, no, I don't care what happens to the stock market. If we lower rates, it will not be to bail out the stock market. It will be because the data says that we can lower rates. And he said he's extremely worried about both inflation and unemployment, which is their two mandates, which leaves them basically frozen. So,
by the way, Tom, I think I know a thing that's going to get defunded. Right?
Yeah, well,
you can't replace somebody, defund it.
I got to do one more story just because you reminded me, and then we'll call it. This was
defund
fascinating. Give me a second. It takes me a second to find these.
Yeah, Trump fired Powell.
Come on.
There's another poll. Who owns the Federal Reserve? Yeah, Sarah Melling Gaming. Trump doesn't have the power to fire Poland.
So here we go. So this article came out today. Hassett says Trump is studying whether removing Powell is an option. Donald Trump is studying whether he's able to fire Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, his top economist said Friday, a day after the president publicly criticized the head of the central bank for not moving fast enough to slash interest rates. So whoever said that, that's true. I mean, conventional wisdom is that's outside of the purview of the president of the United States, but obviously they are looking for a loophole. You just mentioned one, George. Right? That's the ultimate way. If you can't fire them, don't fund them.
Let's put it this way. We're at the end of the usefulness of the Federal Reserve System. By the way,
I find it shocking that he would say what he said and that he's not being more dovish and talking about the rate cuts that I know are coming. The market knows they're coming. Here's how much the market knows they're coming. If you go to December, the market's pricing in a 0% chance of no rate cuts, a 2% chance of one rate cut, a 14% chance of two, and I'm saying 25 basis point rate cuts, 14% chance of two. What are they really pricing in? 3, 4, 5 rate cuts. So all this is just bluster from Jerome Powell, and it's tanking the market in the meantime. It's counterproductive. He's not helping. The Fed is notorious for being like, remember we heard for years, oh, don't worry, inflation, we don't need to raise interest rates. Inflation's transitory. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Inflation spirals out of control and they drastically raise interest rates a year after they should have. Had they done that a year earlier, in my opinion, yes, we would have had some inflation. There was other reasons that happened, right? We were raining money down on people when we shut the world down, but they were late. They were late raising them. They're late lowering them. It's just a long-standing tradition. These guys the inflation is such a boogeyman to the Federal Reserve that they're terrified of lowering rates, and it freezes them. And quite frankly, it hurts the economy. I think, it's my opinion, they're doing a bad job. And Miner Deegan's asking a very good question. Is Powell playing politics? If you look at his rate hikes and his rate cuts, it sure looks like he's got a political agenda. I don't know that he does. He seems like a thoughtful guy and all that, but to me, I almost always disagree with what he's talking about. Parting thoughts, George, for those of you who celebrate that on this Easter weekend.
Listening to you talk, Tom, makes me glad I got into XRP.
There you go.
I just think the only thing that's crazy is that when I started putting more money into crypto, I started putting it all into BTC because I didn't like the way that the miners were acting. And I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, you shifted gears.
I'm still up on that, and I'm down big time on my miners, my Bitcoin miners.
Yes. So the question is, it'll be interesting to see if at some point you think it's time to get back in, because you were pretty good on, nobody times things perfectly, but you were pretty good on switching gears.
For a month again, start playing the game. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for getting us to 100 likes. Thank you. Special thanks to the members. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. If you're celebrating the holidays, happy holidays. We will see the members Tuesday for the members only live stream. Thanks again.